Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to anyone new to the channel. We're going to be doing part 2 of our door repair series. As you can see, this door is hanging low on the right side, and it's hanging low overall. That reveal on the top of the door is pretty big. Now the fix for this is going to be to raise the door in its frame by replacing the hinges. You can see these hinges are showing signs of wear, where the metal is grinding against itself. And what happens is it creates a gap between the knuckles, and so the door on the left is able to drop down, and that affects how it closes. It affects the air gap around the door. And also, if you take note, these two screws are actually longer screws that go all the way into the door jamb to help support it, and that will also help pull that top of the door back towards the jamb, which will also help support it and help it hang properly in the opening. These hinges have round corners, and that also doesn't fit in the square mortises that were in the door already. So we're going to use these shims that are cut out of some compressed cardboard, and we're going to use those to act as spacers. Both of them will be in the bottom hinge, and that will help pull the door into the opening and hold it in a better position to help square everything up. Now, these shims I'm putting under the door are basically improvised wedges. They will help support the door while I'm swapping the hinges out. Another option would be to pull the pins, remove the door, change out the leaves of the hinges individually, put the door back up, and then try to lock it back into the other side of the hinge and then put the pins back in. That's one way to go about it. I chose to do it this way. My shoulder is tweaked right now, so I'd rather not carry this door anywhere, so I'm going to try to do it in place. Now, I'm realizing at this point that I didn't open the door quite far enough, so if you swing it past 90 degrees when you prop it open, it gives you better access to the hinges so you can get your driver in there. And I'm going to remove this old hinge, and because these wedges are in place under the door, when I go to put the new hinge on, the door and the jamb aren't really lined up properly for the new hinges because the new hinges don't have all the wear in them. So these wedges underneath will allow me to drive them in, raise the door slightly, and help align everything when I go to put the new hinges back in place. Little tap knocks it loose. Now I've got my shims, and I'm going to place one shim on the jamb side of the opening and the other one on the door, because if you place both shims in the mortise, you run the risk of eliminating the mortise. Essentially, you fill it up with the shims, and the mortise is there to really key that hinge into position so it can't shift around. So by splitting the shims, one on the door, one on the jamb, you're still gaining the thickness of both the shims, but you're not compromising either mortise. And those mortises really are helpful to keep the door in alignment. Also, this is a 6'8" door, so I have 3 hinges on it. That's pretty standard. If you go to a really tall door, like an 8-foot tall door or bigger, or a really heavy door, you might move to 4 hinges. Now, as you can see, I'm putting the other shim on the other side. And this is the tricky part, because you've got to line everything back up. The door is not really wanting to sit where I want it, but because it's on these shims, I can sort of nudge the shims around. I can tap on them to raise the door, and what I'm doing right here is actually I'm going to loosen the upper hinges slightly. That means backing the screws out but not taking them out. That way the door won't fall over, but it'll allow me to do some adjustments, and I'll be able to get this hinge lined up where I want it. Because the problem is it needs to fall back in that mortise, and usually that first one doesn't want to go in very well. But since I already have existing holes in the door, I'm also able to get a screw started, and that screw will sort of help draw the hinge into the correct position. I don't want to just force it, because a lot of times it won't sit quite right. With this one, I think I get the screw in, and that's an extra long screw. That can be helpful in the door. With these doors, the edge of the door is solid wood, but the core of the door is particle board. So at some point you're hitting some particle board and you're not really getting as much meat with the screw. And this hinge isn't quite sitting the way that I want it. So I'm going to loosen these upper ones a little bit, see if we can get just the play we need to get this mortise, or this hinge, to fall into its mortise. Take a little bit of weight off of the door by prying up with my hammer. I feel like the hinges were sort of binding at that point, because I've got it supported on that upper hinge now. And here you can see I'm putting a screw in a different hole, and sometimes one of the holes will help the hinge fall into place better than the other. So I'm backing out that first screw a little bit, and I'm able to tighten them in and get that to fall into position. Now I can add the rest of my screws. And once you get those screws placed in there, you can repeat the process on the other hinges. And the other hinges won't require a shim. The middle one could probably take one in some instances, but the way that my door jamb is bowed slightly, I really don't need the hinge in the middle to have a shim. So once I've got the shims replaced, I'm swapping out my old Q-Lon weatherstripping, which is a foam, sort of a question mark profile with a vinyl coating around it, and then what would be the bottom of the question mark is a barbed flange that tucks into a saw curve. And you can see it's pretty easy for it to just snap into the groove in the door. Now the grooves don't go all the way to the end of the door in some cases, so what I'll do is, scissors work, a knife works, don't cut yourself. But if you cut a little bit of a notch out, that will make up for the fact that the kerf in the door doesn't go all the way to the top. And then if you cut an angle on this, it will seat nicely against the other piece of the weather stripping. Now I'll get you some final shots of the door and how everything's working together when we finish this up. But that gets the weather stripping and hinge portion of this series done. And I'll be getting back to you with the door hardware, and with this particular hardware, rekeying it to match my other keys. So hopefully this was helpful, and hope you can join us again soon. Take care.